You're watching Around the World, our top global stories. First up, the latest on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which continues. In the latest, Russian attacks struck a 5-story apartment building block in Zaporizhzhia overnight, and Ukrainian forces are hanging on to their positions in the fiercely contested frontline town of Bakhmut under constant attack from Russian troops. But even as Ukraine looks to inflict as much Russian losses as possible and make Russia use up its ammunition and resources, they may yet have to withdraw its forces from Bakhmut soon. Since invading Ukraine a year ago, Russia has bombarded many cities and towns it wants to occupy, especially in the eastern parts of Ukraine. And in the latest, 2 people were killed and at least 4 others were hospitalized after a missile strike hit a residential building in Zaporizhzhia in the early hours of Thursday. Ukraine's emergency service rescued 20 people from the 5-story building. Rescue operations are still underway at the site of the strike. Meanwhile, Bakhmut continues to be heavily contested. Russia claims it's inching closer to claiming Bakhmut. Ukrainian helicopter unit of the 18th Military Aviation Brigade has been fighting in the Bakhmut area. Helicopters play a vital and important role in delivering ammunition and provision, evacuating wounded and the dead, and providing air support to troops on the ground. Meanwhile, many more residential buildings and houses were seen burning after shelling in Bakhmut. Fighting for the eastern frontline city has grown even more brutal, with Russia losing hundreds of troops every day, according to Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Russian military claims that they have eliminated more than 500 Ukrainian troops in the last 24 hours.
In the Donetsk direction, about 350 Ukrainian troops were killed in 24 hours in the course of active fighting by the southern group of Russian armed forces, aviation strikes, fire by artillery, and heavy flamethrower systems.
On the other hand, after training for US-made Abrams tanks, Ukrainian soldiers at the British military training camp in Wiltshire have been receiving training on how to use the Britain-made Challenger tanks. Meanwhile, Russia has mobilized hundreds of thousands of conscripts and it aims to expand its military from 1 million to 1.5 million troops. For Ukraine, time is of the essence to train as many troops as possible before Russia launches an expected spring offensive. Away from the front lines, in the US, the House Armed Forces Committee held a hearing to question officials about the Ukraine funding timeline. Members of the US Congress have persistently questioned how closely America is tracking its aid to Ukraine to ensure that it's not subject to fraud or ending up in the wrong hands. California Democrat Ro Khanna asked, how many more times do you think US Congress will need to provide aid? This, even as Ukraine's President Zelensky said that despite a difficult winter, Ukrainians were still being provided with electricity and heating.
This winter is over. It was very difficult, and every Ukrainian felt this difficulty without exaggeration. But still, we were able to provide Ukraine with energy and heat. Yes, the threat to the power system remains, but the work for the sake of the power system continues.
But even in these harrowing conditions, the resolve of the Ukrainians is extremely commendable, as they still find time to enjoy and even dance, even as death is being dropped down on them from the skies. Ukraine's capital Kiev's residents gather in a subway near a metro station every week to perform and learn traditional Ukrainian dance forms. Moving on to Israel, where it was a national day of disruption. People in huge numbers were out in the streets again, protesting against the controversial judicial reforms passed by the Netanyahu government, with protesters reaching the gates of Netanyahu's house in Jerusalem, even as his wife was stuck in a salon in Tel Aviv amidst all the chaos. Weeks of anti-government protests turned violent for the first time. Protesters scuffled with the police near Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister's private residence in Jerusalem. This even as Netanyahu's wife, Sara Netanyahu, was trapped in a hair salon in Tel Aviv with the police called to the scene to keep demonstrators away. And Mrs. Netanyahu was forced to wait for hours before she was extricated from there. Israeli protesters waving national flags marched on in Tel Aviv and other cities around the country throughout the day and resumed protesting at night in several places, including Jerusalem, Naharia, Pardes HaNakarkur, and Zichron Yaakov. Cardboards cut out in the shape of tombstones reading the democracy of Israel. Demonstrators in Tel Aviv blocked streets and police employed stun grenades and water cannons, with officers on horseback as well, in a rare use of force in a bid to disperse the crowds. Prime Minister Netanyahu has deemed it as anarchy. In a televised statement, he accused the demonstrators of crossing a red line.
The freedom of demonstration is not a license to drag the country into anarchy, into chaos, because a sovereign country cannot tolerate anarchy. I know that there are many citizens among you, lovers of the country, who enthusiastically support legal reform. I also know that there are many other citizens, also lovers of the country, who oppose the reform with the same enthusiasm. But in democracy there are clear rules on how to conduct the debate. There are red lines that must not be crossed.
Meanwhile, Israeli lawmakers held a preliminary vote on the controversial judicial reforms bill. Netanyahu and his justice minister argued that the change is necessary to reset the balance between elected officials of Israel and the Supreme Court of Israel. Netanyahu and his coalition partners, a collection of ultra-Orthodox and hardline nationalist parties, say that the plan is needed to rein in the powers of unelected judges. The broader judicial reforms announced in the month of January includes measures that critics argue are intended to hand politicians more power at the expense of the judiciary. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan have been asked to vacate their home in Britain. This is a further fraying of ties with the royal family amidst preparations for the coronation of King Charles III. Frogmore Cottage on the grounds of Windsor Castle, west of London, had been intended as the couple's main residence before they gave up royal duties and moved to Southern California in the US. The Sun newspaper has reported that Charles started the eviction process on the 11th of January, the day after the publication of Harry's explosive memoir, Spare. A spokesperson for the couple said in a statement, and I quote, "We can confirm the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been requested to vacate their residence at Frogmore Cottage," unquote. Disclosures that Harry made in his much publicized and best-selling memoir, Spare, deepened the rift between him and his family. The book included his account of private conversations that he had with his father and his brother, Prince William. After they left Britain, Harry and Meghan had said that Frogmore Cottage would remain their base when they visit the UK. In September 2020, it was announced that the couple had repaid around £2.5 million, or more than $3 million, in British taxpayers' money that was used to renovate the home when they were working members of the royal family. They said the cost of the entire renovation has been fully covered with that repayment. Moving on to Bakuriani. It's a small village in the former Soviet nation of Georgia, a ski resort that's often likened to Davos in Switzerland, which plays host to the World Economic Forum Summit every year. In fact, Bakuriani is called the Soviet Davos, and it will now be hosting the World Ski Championship. This village has always been a tourist attraction, located 1,700 meters above the sea level, but it's now hosting the World Ski Championship for the first time. 700 athletes from over 40 countries are participating in this championship. Ski training was started back in 1935 for the first time by expert skiers of the Soviet Union in Bakuriani village. Georgia's Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili has been keen on making Bakuriani a winter ski sport venue and has been working with the International Ski Federation on it. And the breakthrough came when Bakuriani village was granted the hosting rights for World Skiing Championships in 2018. Georgia's Ski Federation, along with Georgia's government, took the opportunity to promote skiing as a sport in Georgia and also generate employment in the process. The Georgian government is investing millions and millions of dollars to develop ski infrastructure in Georgia, building resorts for the tourists and installing artificial snowmaking systems for high-quality ski slopes.
It is our top priority as government to ensure we continue developing our ski resorts. Bakuriani, for instance, is a great example of what we've achieved in short period of time. We've ensured that our ski infrastructure is of highest standards and quality. We've invested more than 270 million in ski infrastructure. We've built two water reservoirs, 34-kilometer artificial snowmaking systems, 3 ski lifts, and 11 new ski slopes.
And finally, we leave you with some Legos. Danish toy company, the Lego Group. We've seen Lego superheroes and even a Lego Formula One car. And now for the first time, we have a Lego music band. Lego opened a pop-up store with K-pop theme in South Korea's capital, Seoul, featuring the most popular K-pop music group, BTS, through Lego shop miniatures of its 7 members. The shop, named as Dynamite, was inspired by the record-breaking song of the same name, the music video of which released in 2020 and has raked up more than 1.6 billion views till now. And that's all we have time for in this edition of Around the World. Thank you for watching. Keep it with News 9 Plus.